do we end up in a scenario at some point where it's a snake eating its tail situation? Because AI can't train itself on its own output, right? It will break itself at some point. It needs humans. And so the value exchange between the creator and AI is going to tip at some point. Right now, it's 100% in the LLM's favor. At some point, though, it's going to shift back to the creator once it realizes, oh, we've put too many people out of business and we actually need humans.
I'm Ryan Heath, and welcome to the AI Leadership Lab, where I interview C-suite leaders about their AI journeys. We cover what's working, where they're getting stuck, how they pivot, and the lessons they take from the losses. In today's episode, I'm joined by Zak Ali, US General Manager of the fintech Finder. I thought maybe we should start by setting the scene, getting you to tell us a little bit about your own AI journey, how you ended up in this world of answer engine optimization and what the path ahead for Finder is.
As soon as ChatGPT came out in late 2022, that was when that was sort of my intro into, LLMs shit. It's providing instant answers to questions, and a significant portion of Finder's business is built on getting traffic from people typing in questions into Google and then clicking on sites to get answers. So it was a sort of a bittersweet moment. It was like, okay, this is not going to go away. I immediately saw the utility in it. But then the second thing was, okay, how do we adapt to it, right? How do we learn to have this tool work in our favor versus have it be a sort of death knell to the web? And so that's sort of, that's where my start is. I made sure that as new ones came out, like Claude and Perplexity and even Grok, I'll use sometimes, trying to use those and see how they all work and just trying to stay on top of it because we really are at the birth of a new sort of industry.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I had, way back in the day, 20 years ago, my dream was to be an opinion columnist in a big newspaper. And then the internet just obliterated the idea that people would pay you to have an opinion because everyone could have an opinion everywhere. So I learned early on that it's easy to be disrupted by digital technology. And then ChatGPT came out and the CEO of Coursera sat me down in some interview and he was like, Ryan, I spend 2 hours a day with this now. It's all I do. It's my mentor. It's my coach. Let me show you this. And then I was like, oh my God, my whole journalistic career is going to be over. I need to pivot.
Totally. I mean, what's really interesting is there was that Harvard Business Review study that said that people use it for the highest usage was for therapy of all things. And, so it wasn't to create images or to write copywriting or, it had nothing to do with almost one of those entry level jobs. And so I don't know, it really is one of those technologies that almost is touching every industry at the same time. And I think that's where probably a lot of that fear for entry level jobs comes from.
Well, let's talk about how it does impact sort of how we find things on the internet and maybe the death of web browsing. I don't know what you're about to tell me, but as companies like Perplexity start to directly input AI answers into what you find when you search at the top of your web browser, that's obviously going to change how we find our information. What are the sort of impacts you're seeing sort of generally, and then specifically, how is that impacting how you do your job?
So I think informational queries, right? So what is a credit card, or when is Easter, or some of those sort of very top of funnel informational queries, that's done. I don't think websites are going to be getting traffic from that anymore. Anything that can reasonably be answered by an LLM where you don't feel super inclined to fact check or get a human sort of take on it, I think though that traffic is probably not coming back for folks. And the traffic that is going to persist is going to be the ones that require that human element. And so that's anything where real experience is required to satisfy the intent. And, a lot of people, especially in the SEO community, know all about the fact that people just add Reddit to the end of their query and they want real reviews. And, that community's super on the ball. They don't tolerate any nonsense. If marketers are on there, they sniff them out real quick and you call them out for their bullshit. And so would you trust ChatGPT, who can't ride a bike, to give you a bicycle review? Probably not. I feel that there's still sort of a lane for folks, is anything that requires human experience and human expertise. And I think one thing that about ChatGPT as well is that it's trained on human content, right? So do we end up in a scenario at some point where it's a snake eating its tail situation? Because AI can't train itself on its own output, right? It's not, it will break itself at some point. It needs humans. And so the value exchange between the creator and AI is going to tip at some point. Right now, it's 100% in the LLM's favor. At some point, though, it's going to shift back to the creator once it realizes, oh, we've like put too many people out of business and we actually need humans to, we need real, unique,
You're
authentic
making me think it's
experiences.
actually going to become like Google News, and where they would do those news initiatives, or Facebook would kind of like give a charity payment to a news organization on the same principle that it would destroy itself if it actually destroyed the thing that it was happening to take most of the profits from.
Exactly. It's like killing its food source, right? And it's interesting you say that because Cloudflare's CEO launched pay per crawl, where publishers and anyone who owns a website who uses Cloudflare services can turn this on, where these LLMs, if they want to crawl your site, actually have to pay you, some fraction of a penny or something for your information. Yeah.
I think that's smart. I mean, I think moving to some form of licensing system that isn't onerous, but does actually acknowledge where value is created originally, probably something we're going to have to move to. The impact on sort of smaller players. There's one argument which says, okay, if you're a large organization and you've got lots of credible content out there, or you can keep creating it easily because you're huge, you're going to win out of this AEO world compared to SEO. But then I suppose the other argument is no one's an expert. So if you're a small organization, you can just move quicker and better than the big hulking organizations. And maybe you can win out of this new system.
Oh, it's 100%. And I think the advantages of the big folks right now is they actually are probably the ones who are most likely to turn on things like pay-per-crawl or sign these big agreements with OpenAI and Claude. And you certainly see that happening where they're getting paid tons of money because they're losing traffic. But smaller publishers can't necessarily do that, right? If you are a LLM and you can't cite the New York Times because they're blocking you, that's a huge gap in your knowledge. You are going to feel behind. So of course, you're going to pay the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, so have you, to feature their content. But if I start a blog, and who cares, right? They're not going to pay me for my content. And it actually puts me at a disadvantage to try and block them because now I won't surface ever in their answers. So I think the smaller folks are going to have to work with AI. And you're right, they are more lean and they're more nimble because they are small. So they can adapt more quickly and they can move into different sort of form factors. They can be a lot more, precise with their strategies. Whereas a big organization, I'm sure if you've ever worked at a big organization, change happens very slowly there. It's a degree at a time.
Yeah, 100%. And, if you are someone who's wanting to get involved in this world, that you want to become a marketer or some other sort of technical role in this process, what are the sort of skills and fluency that you now need to have? Like, are you out there taking courses and boning up on different things? Or, is there a better way to do it?
I think there's never been a better time to get into marketing because of these tools. And I think just learn by doing. It's never been easier to set up a website. It's never been easier to go on YouTube. And I'm a big fan of YouTube University, which is just basically there's someone who has created a YouTube tutorial on basically any subject. And you can, for free, literally sit at your house and learn a lot of these skills. And the reason why I say it's never been a better time is because one, the access to information is there, but two, we're in this moment where there's a lot of uncertainty. So it's kind of a resetting of the playing field. The old model is dying in a lot of ways. SEO in 2015 to 2018 looks so much different than SEO today. We have folks saying that they're going to move from a model where they're measuring performance on traffic and revenue to impressions, right? And impressions are pretty empty if that doesn't translate to revenue or traffic. And so the person who's just joining, who can just sort of get stuck in and right away and just see what works, they are going to have just as good a shot at, moving and succeeding in this sort of era as everyone else.
Yeah. Like the two things that jump out to me, like when you say that is, and I've forgotten who actually told me this, but they were just like, look, stop worrying about what you don't know about AI. Like everyone has only had 2 years to figure this out. So if you want to go be some scientist in a particular specialty, you're 100 or more years behind in trying to catch up with all of the knowledge that people have learned. Everyone else here has only been learning for 2 years or less. And then to a YouTube university point, I might still go to college today if I was a 17-year-old, but a large part of me would be tempted to say, like, well, why don't I just spend it all on either free or very low cost online courses and stitch my own degree together and then just get out there and start earning.
Totally. It almost feels like today's a day and age, you go to college for the social aspect, right? To learn how to talk to people and to, not be awkward and sort of figure yourself out. But the learning part can happen at your home.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But move next to Tulane or one of the other big party colleges and go to YouTube University.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. We're great role models on this podcast. Yeah. Now, sort of on sort of similar topic areas, like for me, like if you think sort of 2 or 3 years out from today, we're clearly going to be in this sort of post-click economy is the way that I think about it. So less traffic going to websites because the AI is surfacing all the answers. What do you think is the sort of broader impact on the digital ecosystem? Are we going to have to come up with new ways like what Cloudflare has come up with to share value that is created by AI and around AI?
I actually think like I'm someone who likes to take a long-term optimistic view of things. And I actually think this is going to force creators and small business owners and really any size business owners to really lean into authenticity, right? If we're going to exist in a world where everything's samey because everything's being created by AI, then the stuff that's going to stick out is going to be the authentic experiences that others are able to embed into their content, and whether it's through written or video or podcast, what have you. There's that scene in Good Will Hunting that I really like where he's talking to Matt Damon, or, Robin was talking to Matt Damon's character on the bench, and he's like, you could probably, do I know anything about your life? Because I read Oliver Twist, right? Like he you can read stuff and you can learn about stuff and you can have a facsimile Mona Lisa in your house, but it's not the Mona Lisa. And I think that's the same, that those same principles, that same sort of spirit will exist with AI as well. So I actually think it'll be a net positive when it's all said and done, as we adapt to it and figure out ways to become even more human and showcase even more of our authentic selves.
If we sort of like shift gears a little bit now and think a bit more on the sort of ethics and then eventually the regulation side of all of this, I keep thinking AI is great because it can give you very detailed, personalized information.
Yeah.
But then it obviously requires access to a lot of quite personal information in order to achieve that for you, or to kind of be surveilling you for a long time in order to hit those marks.
Yeah.
What are the ways that we can allow these innovations to occur so that we benefit from that kind of personalization upgrade, but where we don't like completely trash what is left of our privacy?
So I use ChatGPT primarily, and they have the ability to toggle off allowing ChatGPT to train on your data. So assuming they respect that and they're actually not reading your conversations, I think that would be, ideal.
And you typically need a paid plan for that.
Yes.
You're using the free plan. You are the product people. You are not the customer.
That is a good point. But I do think, as far as privacy, I would never put your credit card details into ChatGPT. I wouldn't put anything you wouldn't want potentially leaked online into ChatGPT, which we saw recently that used to be able to, you still can share chats, but little did we know these were being indexed by Google, which means they were showing up in Google search. So anyone who typed in whatever chatgpt.com/share, which was like the beginning of that URL, you saw a bunch of people's private group, messages that they've shared with their friends and their family about what ChatGPT said with them. And, there was nothing too juicy that I found. I also didn't look very hard, but I would be surprised if there wasn't something in there that could have been damaging or hurtful to somebody's reputation. And so I would be very careful about privacy. And, zooming out though from the ethics, on an ethics standpoint, the climate really comes to mind, right? Or is it worth boiling our oceans for some of the work that we're asking ChatGPT, right? It takes up a lot of water, it's a lot of energy, which is actually leading to the development of SLMs, which are small language models, which are significantly more efficient.
I feel so vindicated. My
Yeah.
first week at Axios, when I really didn't know much about AI at all, it was actually the second story I pitched entirely, was like the future is small language models. And I wasn't looking at it just from the environmental perspective, but I was like, well, if you want to help doctors, you don't want to help doctors with something that's trained on complete nonsense on
Yep.
the internet. You want to train it on medical papers.
Yes.
Like, so why on earth would you want a large language model? It doesn't make any
Right.
sense. Or you would take the small data set and maybe you connect it to Claude or something like that to make the answer sound pretty, but you don't
Yes.
want it to generate the actual answer.
No, no. I mean, I always say that I don't know if ChatGPT wants to trade on my data, I might make it dumber, right? Like, you should have very specialized language models. I think that is the way forward. And there's an acronym, I think that's called RAG, which is like retrieval, augmented retrieval, or generation, which basically it's where your information is the sort of library it pulls from to come up with its responses. And so, and that actually gives you the better output. So it actually seems like not using an LLM, it like you mentioned, is actually going to give you it's going to make it the most efficient it can possibly be.
One question I have, and I don't know whether you have a view on it, but I've been starting to think about it, is as people start using AI to generate more answers and content and so on, it like raises questions about who deserves credit for for generating the material. Are we going to be able to get away with claiming credit as humans who have been like getting 80% of the stuff from AI and then sort of tweaking it and editing it? Or is there some other system where we're going to be forced to disclose that we used these tools and, and maybe in the case of patents and royalties, share the proceeds instead of keeping it all for ourselves?
Oh, I mean, for creative writing especially, I do think there needs to be some sort of mechanism in place to not allow just blatant plagiarism. And in the SEO world, a lot of the content's very written like professionally and objectively. And so before AI, all was already looking samey. And now with AI, there's the easy tells, right? I actually hate the fact that M dashes are associated with AI now.
Excuse me, I use them all the time, and I used to put spaces around mine because I think they're really ugly when they don't have a space. So I just do it my own way. And now people think I use ChatGPT.
I think we need to take the M dash back. That is number one. Like one on my agenda is like, I'm just going to use them and then fight for my life in the comments.
But we can make like emoji versions, like our own personalized M dashes.
That's true.
This is me.
But the tells are there, right? The like in a digital age, it starts all their sentences very samey, and I think it's very. So I think no matter what, there has to be some degree of human editing to it. So I think if depends on how much you're applying to the piece of content you're creating, that is your own soul and your own energy that you've put into it to make it your own style and tone of voice and whatnot. That is what's going to, I think, determine whether or not you've crossed a line between like pure plagiarism and, actually being the creator behind the work. Interactivity is going to matter a lot more as well. I think as it's very easy to get the words part now with AI. So I think things like tools and calculators and interactive graphics and original images and, things like that is going to take a larger share in the, in the sort of web landscape, at least in the SEO world. Now we're almost veering into this agentic future, which is really crazy. And who knows if people will even go to websites anymore, or if it'll just be like a Her situation where you got the, Scarlett Johansson in your ear and you're just telling it what to do and it's just doing it on your behalf. Like, do you need apps anymore? Do I need a Chase app, or do I just say, hey, can you transfer my money from my account to my other account? Like, how integrated are these technologies going to get into our life?
I mean, probably pretty integrated, but this is where I'm a bit snobby, where I'm like, well, I don't really want the agent to make the decision for me. Like, I would like it to do basic research or give me 3 options, but I'm sure as hell going to choose my own holiday.
Yes.
Like, do what some agent told me to do in Europe.
I know. It's funny. Like, so I've written like headlines for newsletters and sometimes I'm like, just have writer's block. And what's actually got me out of my writer's block is asking ChatGPT and then being able to say, these are all shit. Now I know what I want. So sometimes you can use it to determine what you don't want.
Now, I know you've been thinking a lot about regulation, and there's been lots of action in states like Colorado and New York. in New York, one of the really interesting ones was around something called the Raise Act, where it's like requiring companies to disclose if they are laying workers off because of AI. I think that is like a practical system. It seems to me like a lovely theory, but there's just going to be a million loopholes, and people are going to claim they didn't lay people off because of AI, even if that was the real reason.
So I never think we should create regulation based off of like cultural moments. Like I think it needs to be rooted in logic a lot of the times. I know it's a big buzz for, there's a lot of creatives, and rightfully so, and in a lot of instances are railing against AI. And so what's the point of that disclosure? What's the actual end result of that? If a company says yes, then what really changed? Are they going to get punished for having laid someone off because they replace them with AI, or is it just to sort of create the illusion of we're watching you and we want to discourage it, or is it pure data collection? Right. I don't think necessarily that was really well articulated in that. But I do think I don't know. I think there needs to be some regulation, but then there's also the fact that China's probably ahead of us in this, and there's the sort of national security element to it as well. Like, can we fall behind? Are we going to be stuck in the economy of old while they've surged past us the way we went from a manufacturing economy to a services economy while the rest of the world was still doing manufacturing? So now we're going to be moving into this next sort of thing. And do we want to regulate ourselves out of being able to compete, right, on the world scale in AI? But there's so many nuances to it, and it just sort of concerns me that we have such a sort of geriatric Congress, I think, at the moment, because I don't think they're equipped for it, and I don't think they understand it fully. But there is things like, especially with the image generation, child stuff, right? There's real concern there, or at catfishing people, or, especially with the voice AIs, pretending impersonation and doing these fraud scams, where they pretend they've kidnapped someone in your family and it sounds just like them because they posted a video online that was public. So
But
there's
then
so many
that's the
facets to it.
point where you can, in effect, create a kind of cultural guardrail if you're investing in AI literacy. And I'm not saying that has to be like federal funding,
It's true.
but there would be a way for the government to invest in that without trying to like regulate individual companies. It's kind of effectively investing in the skills of the population to cope with this sort of
Yes.
situation. And then the other thing I always think of is one reason why China leaps ahead is not, it's got the most amazing engineers or it's pumping a bunch of money into AI companies, but it may be doing that. It's that the population generally is a very high trust population. Like they've been
Yep.
taught to trust the government.
Yeah.
That's a bit insidious. But
Yeah.
anyway, it means that they trust new AI systems, so they use them. And we're all taught that tech companies are kind of like evil and plotting
Yeah.
against us and to not trust it. So we
Right.
don't use it as much. And we fall behind, not because of some government thing, but because we're like tripping over ourselves.
And so it's like we're distrustful and gullible, which is a horrible combination. And so, I would hope if we can get some AI literacy, because that's something that I also read that China's already like investing it in their elementary schools of like teaching people how to use AI. Meanwhile, we don't have basic media literacy in this country a lot of the time. So it is it's a interesting, dynamic, and we got to get serious about it quickly.
Is there anything that is kind of like making you super excited or super worried about what you're seeing out there in the AI?
Okay, super excited. I love that it's lowering the barrier to entrepreneurship, sort of the way that like cloud computing did. At one point, you had to have all this expensive infrastructure and whatever, like just to even start a tech business. And now you just need a $20 subscription and like basic ability to troubleshoot, and you can create your own apps and your own designs and your prototype. Like, so there's so much you can do now to get into building your own business, because all of it can be handled essentially by some tool or one or another. So it's never been less expensive. So I'm excited to see the things people create, and hopefully, I don't know, more services, more helpful tools come out of this, and more people are able to sort of live their dreams and live better lives. But what I'm concerned about is that the retraining required to get people to take full advantage of this hasn't really necessarily been discussed yet. And I don't necessarily believe in what was Adam Smith's sort of view on capitalism, where it'll work itself out, like it'll like just mysteriously. I actually don't think that's true. I think that you have to intentionally prime your like citizens and people, your employees to adapt to do higher level, higher impact work. If all they've known is data entry, and you don't teach them how to take that into maybe analysis or something else, they're going to feel like they've been automated out of a job and with no recourse.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is a real risk. If there's any consolation, having just spent part of the summer in Europe, I think there are many more people in the US that are having this discussion. And it's not necessarily the majority, but AI is a very real thing that most people have touched, even if briefly in the
Yeah.
US. And then I've talked to my European and Australian friends, and it's kind of like, it's like a theoretical thing, like there is a debate going on. They know this thing is coming, but they don't really think about it and use it on a daily basis. So, I think the US is doing not great, but better than many people here might realize when you look at it in that global context.
It's so true. I have noticed that as well, that like the US, it does seem like it's almost like a two-country sort of competition at the moment, between the US and China. But what's really funny to me, if we actually go back to the media literacy sort of thing, is that are you still on X or Twitter or whatever it is these days? I mean,
I'm literally on it because it would feel sad to give up 80,000 followers, but
yes.
Can I get a retweet? No.
Right. Exactly. So I'm definitely spending more of my time lurking these days than posting. And when I go through, whenever I end up in politics or news Twitter, like I'm going through the comments and you just see like, oh my God. But there's this thing that people are doing where they say, is this true? And they @ Grok, and Grok gives them a response. And it's like giving them well-researched, fact-based responses. I mean, there was that period of time where it went off the rails, and that was a bad, few days. But it does like sort of start to dispel some fake news. And it's like starting to say, oh, well, actually, the economy has done better under these certain administrations and stuff. Right?
Elon's invisible hand of AI that's fixing the AI world.
Right. And I think he would be against some of the responses coming out,
Look, there is hope. Okay, that's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
Zak Ali, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, it was a pleasure. And anytime you want to talk AI, I'm here.
Thanks for listening. 2 things before you go. First, if you'd like to appear on the show or know someone I should have on, you can find me through ryanheathconsulting.com. Finally, please tell a friend or colleague about AI Leadership Lab. Even better, leave a short 5-star rating or review on whatever platform you found this podcast. It'll help us reach more of the people who'd enjoy these tips and tricks. Thanks, and talk soon.